right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Remote Work Wednesday. On behalf of the Remote Online Initiative and the K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality Team, we're so glad to have you with us, and we appreciate our speakers who are joining us. I'm Ron Wilson. I'm director of the Huck Boyd Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. It happens that today I am joining you remotely from Florida, where we're visiting family. So we're really practicing our remote work skills here as I'm online from Florida. I do want to say a big thanks to Deborah Cole, our state program leader coordinator for K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality. Deb Oldie from the North Central Regional Planning Commission has also been our partner on getting Remote Work Wednesday started. This is a project of the Remote Online Initiative, as you see on the screen, and the website is kansasremotework.com, where in partnership as an affiliate of Utah State University and the Extension Service there, we're offering month-long online classes that enable participants to become trained and certified as a remote worker or a remote work team leader. And I love to tell the story that in 2019, we at K-State were hearing that Utah State University was doing this pioneering work, this great initiative, having to deal with people working from home and working remotely. And so in January of 2020, I took the Remote Online Initiative class to learn about what this remote work idea was all about. And 6 weeks later, the economy shut down and I had no choice but to work remotely. And that class was invaluable. And I have come to love remote work and really appreciate this class. And so we're fortunate to have our guests with us. I should say about Remote Work Wednesday, we do the Zoom call on the first Wednesday of each month for anyone interested in remote work. And so our next Remote Work Wednesday will be on April 3, 2024. So mark that on your calendars ahead. Our goal is simple: to learn about the opportunities and challenges of remote or hybrid work for those who choose to use it. So as I mentioned, I took the remote work class in January of 2020. And K-State is now an official affiliate, has been for several years, with Utah State University. And we're so pleased that two members of the Utah State team that have done this pioneering work are with us today to talk about trends and barriers and opportunities. Mike Sarles is the statewide program coordinator, and Katie Christensen is program coordinator with the Utah State University team. And I know that Mike came from the private sector to this project, was a remote work team leader for a number of years in China, as I recollect. And Mike and Katie have done such a super job of leading this initiative for Utah State. So we welcome Mike and Katie, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, first, let me just put an agenda in the chat. So if you want to look in your chat, we're first going to talk about remote work kind of at a 30,000 foot level and just look at trends and things that are going on in the industry today. And then we'll talk a little bit about benefits of remote work to individuals, companies, communities, and the environment. And then we'll also talk about something that seems to be a pressing question that a lot of people have that are worried about remote work or starting to get involved in remote work, about how do I not lose my connection to my company, my teammates when I go remote, or if I'm just starting a remote job, how do I build those connections so that I continue to have have a good connection with my team, my managers, so I have the opportunity to increase my stature within the company, get a promotion, or I get more responsibilities. So we'll talk about that. But what's most important is the rules of this meeting. Ask questions. Don't wait till the end. Raise your hand, wave your arm, unmute, ask a question. We want to hear your questions, and we'd love to answer them. And also, there aren't any dumb questions, so ask anything. Okay, there might be some dumb questions, but generally speaking, there are no dumb questions in a meeting like this. So, and then if you're willing, please do turn on your video, because we don't like talking to black squares. If you can't, we understand you're eating your sandwich. That's okay. We don't need to see that, or we might be jealous if you see it, so that's okay. Anyway, without further ado, and thank you again, Ron, for the warm welcome and a great partnership over many years now. And I hope to meet you in person someday. That would be awesome. Anyway, I'm going to let Katie. She's got the 30,000 foot view, and we'll look at some research, and then we'll go from there. So, Katie,
All right.
away.
All right. So I'm going to just share some statistics with you. What we're referencing is called the work from home research, which is done by Nick Bloom from Stanford University and his partners. And then the next data points that we'll show you are from a report called the Flex Index, that both of these organizations are doing continual research on remote work. And Nick Bloom has actually been doing research on remote work since the 1990s. So he's been doing it for a while, and we tend to kind of look to him as we're looking for trends. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. This stat, just as of February 2024, about 28% of paid days in the US were work from home days. And that trend obviously has gone down because during the pandemic, everybody was working at home. And now that we're coming out of that in 2024, we're seeing that more and more companies are either asking people to come back in a hybrid fashion or come back fully, or people are opting to go back to work in a hybrid fashion. So, and they are pulling both from census reports as well as their own polling data.
Can I make one comment about that?
Yes, please.
If you look at the beginning of that chart, you can see that prior to the pandemic, the numbers were about 6 or 7% of the time was work from home time, but now it's a huge multiple of that. And maybe that's what you're going to show in the next slide.
Yeah. So this is the pandemic, showing the impact of the pandemic on work from home permanently. As of right now, you can see 1965.4, and then it just kind of grew and grew and grew, and then we hit 2020, and 61.5% of work days were done from home. And now it's kind of gone down, but Nick Bloom is predicting that this is going to look more like the swoop on a Nike shoe. So it will kind of start to come back up as companies realize that maybe not everybody wants to work in the office. I'm going to go down to, sorry, I'm just following the page numbers that I wrote down because I don't always do well going back and forth on screens. The gap between how much employees want to work from home and employer plans is stable right now at about 0.5 days. There was a period of time where this number was not stable. Employees were wanting far more days working from home, and employers were wanting more days in the office. We're kind of seeing that there's some neutral ground being struck, as I'm sure you all have heard of companies saying, nope, you have to come back to work, and their employees saying, no, we're going to go find another job that will let us continue to work hybrid or fully remote. Employers offer fewer fully remote jobs and more fully on-site jobs that employees want. So this chart shows, the amount wanted to work post-COVID and then the current amount. So there's a little bit of a difference there between what employees want and what employers are offering. So just something to keep in mind if you're leading teams. And then we always like to point out the industries that have the best remote work options. And obviously that's going to be in the information and tech department, because so many of those jobs can be done from home. And hospitality and food services is always going to kind of fall at the bottom of that chart, because it's a little bit harder to do that from home as much as they would like to. My husband managed a hotel during COVID and wished many times that he could just work from home and not worry about going in. The next chart I want to talk about is for employees that can work from home. We're seeing more and more that hybrid is what they want. And in particular, the 2 in and 3 out, or 3 in and 2 out, that pattern has emerged and has been really trending popularly. So we are seeing a lot of people that are saying we'd rather work hybrid, and these are the days we want to work. And employer flexibility is crucial to that. So for those of you that are leaders, keep that in mind. And for those of you that are looking for remote work, remember that flexibility is a big deal as you're looking for remote work. I'm going to scroll past a couple of these pages. This stat was something that in December, Nick Bloom and the Flex Index did a podcast together. And at the very beginning, while they were waiting for other people to join, someone threw out, I wonder what the stats are for pet owners for working from home. And so sure enough, in the next work from home stats, he surveyed pet owners. So you can see, pet owners maybe want to work a couple more days from home to take care of their pets. I know that is true for me. I just was delighted that he actually put that in.
Interesting how dog owners and cat owners aren't super different there, that they're actually quite similar in their desires to work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this has been like a conversation that our team has had more than once on, right down from, do dog owners use Mac, Apple products more, or do they use Dell products? And how many, like it's been something that's come up on our team. So it was nice to see it be in some national data. And then the last slide I want to show from this chart is Monday and Fridays are really becoming a popular work from home day, obviously. Some people are going to abuse that, I'm not going to lie, because it's really easy to work from home on a Friday and take a 3-day weekend, or on Monday. But those are 2 days that have come kind of in the lead of where people would like to work from home. So, and then I'm going to switch over to the Flex Index. The Flex Index looks at a lot more environmental impacts on the workforce. It looks at the organizational structure. It looks at leadership structure. So it's really a complete
Are you
study
able to zoom in on that
important.
just a little bit, Katie? It's really hard to
Yeah.
see.
So right here, it shows that the average Glassdoor rate, for those of you that don't know, Glassdoor is a site where employees can go on and rate companies that they've worked for. And so they used data from Glassdoor and found that structured hybrid is definitely right there in the lead of what people are looking for, and what companies are willing to offer as far as flexibility is concerned. And then fully flexible is second, and then full-time in office. So that's at least nice for those of us that eat, sleep, and breathe remote work, to know that it's not being pushed by the wayside. The next one is office requirements and employee sentiment. So you can see again, fully flexible and structured hybrid come out in the lead, whereas full-time in office is not as favorable or as flexible.
And that kind of makes sense, that work-life balance, people would feel like they're having a better work-life balance in a flexible or a structured hybrid, where they do have some more out of the office time.
Yeah. And another interesting thing to look at here is culture and values. One thing that we hear a lot as we teach the leadership course is, oh, our culture is so great, I don't know how we would make it remote. And then we have to remind people, culture does not mean that you have a coffee bar or a cereal bar or a ping pong table in your office. The culture is the way that you interact with your employees and with the public around you. And so that can definitely be done and can thrive in a remote environment. So that's interesting to point out that they found it favorable, culture and values. So I'm gonna skip over this page, and we'll post a link to this in the chat so you can go and take a look at these.
It's there.
So
It's there.
yeah, flexibility by company size. Mike and I thought this was really interesting as we were going through this yesterday to prepare for this. If you look, 500, less than 500 employees, 74% are working fully remote. When you get up into the 25K or more, you see that structured hybrid really take over, and fully remote isn't as much of an option anymore. So I just thought that was really interesting, because you would think that it would maybe be the opposite way around, and it wasn't. So, and then this shows flexibility change from fourth quarter of 2023 to the end of quarter one in 2024. So there'd be the last 3 months of 2023, and then the first couple months of 2024. So it shows the change in the flexibility and the way that employers are reacting to that. So, sorry, I lost my place in my notes. Now I found it. So the last one that we're going to look at, again, it's flexibility by industry. Flex Index really breaks it down, like the top five, the top five industries that do remote work really well, and then the bottom five. So again, you're seeing technology, media and entertainment, insurance, telecommunications, those things that have maybe been done from home for a lot longer are still staying right there at the top. And then in the bottom, you have a lot of the hospitality and education and retail, where you have to be boots on the ground and in person to really thrive in that kind of environment. And then the last slide we wanted to show was the 10 most flexible states for remote work and the 10 least flexible states for remote work. And unfortunately, Kansas has fallen into the lower 10. So you can see right here at 31% full-time in office. And then up here, Utah is at the lower end of the top 10, but we thought that was interesting and something that we wanted to share a little bit. And then this chart just breaks it down by all 50 states. So again, I believe Mike posted that in the chat.
I did.
And so you can go through and read the whole report, but we just wanted to point out a couple of things that we find interesting and that we share as we're teaching our leader classes and our professional courses, and also as we present for different human resource functions and conferences. These are reports that we frequent as we're preparing for those.
Thanks. That's awesome, Katie. I wanted to point out one thing. So Utah very early on decided that remote work was a big deal. And one of the reasons is because of how it can help support rural economies. And that's been a big push from our governor, especially the last few years, as he's come in and made a big push for remote work. He actually mandated that state government offices make sure that a percentage of their jobs were pushed out to remote and rural areas, which has been a huge benefit to rural communities. So that means that if you work for the Department of Transportation, there are some functions that can be done fully remote. Those need to be pushed out to rural communities, so those jobs are not just located in Salt Lake City, but they're out in the smaller communities, which has been a big plus. And there have been several initiatives, including the one that made our class available in 2018 that they pushed out, that was to support the rural economies and to help build infrastructure in those communities, including co-working spaces and things like that, to help people that don't have home infrastructure, but they could still work from a co-working space in their community. So it's been really fun watching how government has helped to push this as businesses see the need for remote workers and diversifying and things. It's been interesting to see how that's helped our economy here in Utah, which is really thriving right now. So I'm not trying to brag, and I'm not originally from Utah. So sorry, but it's been a lot of fun to watch how that's helped. I did want to talk now about some of the benefits of remote work. Does anybody have any questions first before we continue? There was a lot of numbers, and I just want to make sure that we don't have any questions before I continue on. Okay, not
Well,
seeing. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
You mentioned and we've encountered some pushback. You know, the time has come. We want people back in the office. There seems to be some ebb and flow to that. And we've also seen employees push back and say, no, we value this flexibility. I mean, where is the balance point now? Well, and you mentioned that maybe a Nike swoosh, that the projection is that we'll see maybe a gradual return trend toward hybrid at least.
I think, and I just from my own personal management background, when I manage people, I like to walk around and see them working. Now, sometimes they would quickly switch from solitaire back to their work, and I knew that happened, but I felt more comfortable to know that, my employees were here. I can see them breathing, they're alive. But I think that trend will change. I think as the next generation moves into management positions, that they will have less of a feeling that that's how you gauge work. And as we teach them, as they learn that finding out how somebody's doing based on their work accomplished, what they their production of work versus just sitting at a desk. I think that'll change how we look at this, and that may drive some more hybrid or more fully remote. Of course, there are industries that will never be fully remote unless we just put robots there. I hope the robots don't take over. I saw the movie; it didn't end well. So, but
and we always tell people that remote work is a skill; it's not a circumstance.
right,
and it needs to be trained just like any other skill. If you're hired to work from home for a company, then they need it's their responsibility to train you on what they expect. And so as more people receive the training for not just working remotely, but also leading remote teams, I am hoping that we'll see a greater emphasis put on flexibility and autonomy and trust in the workplace. Because I think that if there's an author named Jill Christensen, and she's written a couple books about remote work. And she says that we just finished the greatest workforce experiment that we didn't realize that we were doing, and it was successful. And so the sooner that people can realize that success can continue, the better employee engagement will be, and the better work from home policies will be. So yeah, we're hoping.
A lot of people are worried that remote workers go home and sit on the couch and watch Netflix. And I'm sure that happens. But the surprising thing that was found over the last few years is that people actually valued that remote work opportunity. They valued being home where their loved ones were closer, and they didn't have the commute and all of those things. And so they actually tended to work more than less. They put in 40 more minutes per day into their workday because they weren't commuting. They worked a little bit more. And so I think we have to be more careful as leaders of burnout and people working too much and not separating themselves from the office versus not working enough. One of the gurus in the industry of remote work mentioned that the average worker on site works about 2.46 hours per day of legit work. The rest of the time is, running to the bathroom, talking to colleagues, chit-chatting in the hallway, getting a drink of coffee or whatever, and not working heads down, getting work done. And so he said that his goal was to just improve a little bit on that, and he's already made money by having remote work. And he said that his remote workers are working at least an hour more per day than the on-site workers he had. So he feels like he's been successful in having more productivity out of his team. But I think that's a good point. So thanks for that comment about accountability and responsibility. And I think that's exactly, we need to be accountable, but we also have to have an understanding of what happens when people work from home, that they tend to work more. So let's talk and this is all the benefits. I know if you have a downside to remote work, I'd love to hear about that. So raise your hand, put it in chat. We'll address that too. But from a remote worker point of view, I think there's some really good benefits. One is flexibility. We talked a little bit about that, and being able to manage your schedule flexibly or with flexibility is great. If you have children or dogs or people you care for or whatever, it does allow some of those things to be done during the day when you would usually have to take time off. And so that's important. Reduced commuting is big. Not having to drive even 20 minutes back and forth to work can make a difference in your day as far as what you do in your personal time and give you a better work-life balance. They've found studies have shown that remote workers are more productive. So there's more heads down time, there are less distractions, and there's just, when you can work during your best hours during the day, which may or may not be during work hours, you can get more accomplished. So my best hours are sometimes between 9 p.m. and midnight, and then sometime in the early morning. So my afternoons are awful to work for me, I've noticed. So I like to balance that out if I can, so that I can work during my peak hours, and that would make me more more productive. Location is big, especially for people that live in rural areas. If you can work with a business that's in an urban area, then you can benefit from that job with that big company or that other company and bring that to your rural area. So and you don't have to go there. You can stay at home. Cost savings, of course, from expenses of commuting, but I might mention that I remember my wife stressing about, going to the office every day and wearing certain clothing and having to put stuff on her face and things like that. That's a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of money to go into wardrobes and things like that. So I think that's a big cost savings, in addition to sometimes childcare. Even though you do need to have your children taken care of during your workday, it helps save money, and it increases healthy mental health. So you are happier about your job and you have an overall happier feeling about things you're doing. A wider range to job opportunities. So if you're in a rural area and you're trying to find a job in high tech, well, there isn't any in my town, so you'd have to move somewhere. So that gives you an opportunity to work in different careers that you might not have in your area, and gives you time to do more things like exercise, which I need to do more of. But you can do all kinds of things that you couldn't do if you have that extra hour or two a day that you can spend. And you can, this is probably the most important for people with disabilities. You can customize your workspace that fits your needs as someone with a disability, and you don't have to try to get to a job by commuting somehow if it's really hard to do that. So it opens up new doors to people that have disabilities, whatever they are. And there are many types. Also, I really enjoy being in control of my day and my destiny. So autonomy makes working much a happier experience for me if I know that I'm controlling what I'm doing. And I think what's really nice is I don't have to worry about the person in the cubicle next to me making loud sounds, bothering the heck out of me. It just makes me happier all day long that I don't have to listen to that person next to me chewing gum all day. So that's my own problem. I have those weird quirks, but we've also seen the benefits to minorities, that people are less, there's less discrimination, there's less bias, there's less aggression, microaggressions, and just a lot of benefits to people that are in minority groups. And also for women, there's less problems with advancement. It's more about your performance and your work output rather than time spent in the office. And that's a big deal. And so, I remember a guy in my office when I was younger, he would spend all the time he could with his boss so that he would, curry favor with the boss so that he could get a promotion. But some of the ladies, they needed to go home and take care of their families, and they didn't have time to go play golf or do those things. So it really wasn't fair. But working remotely takes away that and levels the playing field a lot. And so, and again, it saves money. You don't have to put all that money into wardrobes and commuting and everything like that too. So a lot of benefits, and it really is great for single parents and caregivers. So that helps. And a lot of times those responsibilities fall on women, although I have taken care of my kids too as a remote worker. I try to balance that out in my family, but that's good. So for a remote worker, it's got great benefits for businesses. We've seen increased productivity, cost savings because there's lower overhead. You don't have to maintain such a big office space or even have an office if you go fully remote. There are cost savings for, everything, including paper. You don't print as many things because you don't have to buy paper to put in a printer because everybody's working from home. You've got more talent that you have access to because you're hiring across a bigger geographical area. Less sick days. I think that's the biggest for an employer. Less people calling in sick because they're already home and people can work with a sniffle. But if you're kind of sick and you feel, I don't really want to go, it's easy to take the sick day off. So there's less absenteeism and less turnover because employees are happier, and just overall well-being is better with your employees. And if there's a pandemic or a storm or some sort of natural disaster, your business is protected against that because your workers are all over the place. They're not just in one spot. So you don't lose a whole swath of people because of power being out or something. And you're able to control your workforce better, or have more agility because you can scale up or down more easily by hiring from a larger pool of people. Right now, where I live, we're having a very hard time finding workers for our stores and things like that, and we're having to find ways to import people, and that's a lot of work to hire people from other places and bring them in, and more diversity and inclusion in a business where you can hire from all sorts of diverse groups. So, and that makes your business better because you have better ideas, more diverse ideas that can help propel you forward in your business. I'm also a city council person in my town, or in my city. And so I always look at things from economy perspective. And so when we can bring remote workers into our small town and have them, it helps our economy by bringing that salary here. Even though they're working remotely for another company, that money comes to our community that helps our businesses. It helps our gas stations and grocery store, and it helps our schools by having more children. And it can enhance everything that happens in our community. But I think even more important is it allows people to volunteer and have more time to spend in the community to enhance what goes on here. We have soccer coaches, we have baseball coaches, we have all those people that are now freed up from commuting to then volunteer time to help improve our community. And so that's a big deal. And
Can
yeah, go ahead. Sure.
The other thing that we have seen in Utah, especially a lot, is in the rural areas of the state, you have people that have been there for 6 or 7 generations. I am a 6th generation San Juan County resident, which is the county right there at the Four Corners. And my family does not ever want to leave that area. And so when you're providing remote work for people that have been there for generations, you're creating an environment that is culturally safe for them as well. They're able to stay where they feel their values are best aligned. They are able to to stay with the family that they have been with forever. Like my husband does not get this. I have 31st cousins and I am best friends with all of them because that's the way I grew up. And as I've been working remotely, it's been really nice to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go to Blanding for 2 months and work and spend time with my family. And then I'll come back and spend time with my husband. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in.
And I also, and that leads me to one point that not exporting our children outside of our communities, but being able to keep them close by. I'd love to have my kids near me rather than have them move off to the big city to work. And so I really enjoy having remote work. My son can work from home, and so he comes and visits quite frequently, as does my daughter. So I like that.
My little sister had a baby in June, and I went to Blanding for like 2.5 months to help with postpartum.
I didn't even know
that. It was great.
Your background never changed. So
it never changes.
I thought you were in the same place. Yeah. Anyway, so did somebody else have a comment, or was I Didn't see anything. Okay. And the last point was about the environment. A lot of people are concerned about the environment. I am too. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I believe you should clean up and take care of what's around you. Not that I don't know if Eagle Scout means anything anymore, but I do believe in taking care of our planet and what's going on. And so by not having as much commute, you have less emissions. You have fewer people traveling to and from, and it helps with infrastructure and not having to build as much infrastructure to have 17 lanes of traffic in each direction. You have lower office energy consumption, which helps reduce consumption of resources. We talked about paper usage reduction, so less trees cut down, less business travel. Now, remote work doesn't mean no travel, and it doesn't mean that you just sit at home all day. It should mean that you are getting together as a team or as a group frequently, but that's not where your normal work happens. And it also means that we don't have to build out the urban areas, urban sprawl. It means that we can keep those areas preserved for, natural habitats and things like that. As well as one thing that I thought was really cool is if you have extra time, you might learn how to garden. You might be able to do things to sustain your life, where you are, and not spend as much time going to the grocery store and shopping, but maybe you can grow your own tomatoes or something. So I think that's good. I've got solar panels. All of my energy that I use every day is coming from the sun. So it's kind of cool that I'm working in a green office. And so that's my list of benefits to remote work. If anybody wants to complain or argue with them, I'd love to hear it. But so far, it's been good for us. So now, if you don't have any comments or questions, let's move on to the last topic, which is how do I not lose my connection with my company, or how do I build a connection? I think that was a question that I heard from Deborah asked me that actually the other day. And how do you not, if you go to work remotely, you lose all that connection. So how do you feel, Katie? Do you feel like you're gonna lose connection as a remote worker? Or what do you feel?
I'm a firm believer in you get what you put into things. And so from day one, I have made it a point to over communicate at times, because over communication in remote work is just communication. And so I make sure that I take time every week to find one person on the team, at least, that I think has done something phenomenal. And I'll reach out to him and be like, hey, I really appreciate that you do that. Can I do anything for you? Like, what can I do to help you? Or, we have a water cooler channel in Slack where we post random questions and people answer them, like, who would you like to go to dinner with, alive or dead? And what is your favorite dessert, and why? So we put a lot of effort into our team knowing each other and having the opportunity to communicate and not get lost in the shuffle. And so as a remote employee, I feel like the best thing that you can do for yourself is over communicate where it matters. So yeah.
I was looking at an article, and it was quoting a Wall Street Journal reported study that said that people working from home got promoted 31% less frequently in the past year than office-based workers. It also said that 90% of CEOs reported that they are more likely to prioritize in-office employees for career advancing projects or raises or promotions. And then an earlier study from a group called the Society for Human Resource Management found that supervisors held negative perceptions of the work from home trend. This was in 2021, so it's a couple of years old. I assume that that's changed a little bit, but 70% of those managers felt like it was easier to replace a remote worker than an on-site worker, and 62% believed that full-time remote work is harmful to an employee's career objectives. So and remote workers tend to be laid off more than in-person remote workers. So I thought that was interesting and maybe a little bit scary for somebody who was looking to become a remote worker or is a remote worker. And it points out that there are some dangers to your career if you are a remote worker. So wanted to maybe give some ideas, and Katie just gave a great one, which is communication and over communication. You really have to master your communication. And one of those is async communications. Do you have any thoughts on async communication, Katie, or I don't know if you do or not. I can talk about it, but
I will let you talk about it.
well, so
Good.
one thing with remote work is that you do have a lot of communication where you're not talking face to face, or you're not on Zoom, but you're typing things. And so you have to be good at that. You have to practice and be willing to use that form of communication. Some people hate to type, some people hate to write. And that is something you have to be good at as a remote worker. So being able to master those things and keeping track of meeting notes and things that maybe you've missed because you weren't in the meeting, you'll have to do more reading. So that is something you have to do as a remote worker. A lot of times you need to use those channels, like Teams, Microsoft Teams, or Slack, or some other tool that your business uses to get feedback, and then understand what's going on from just what you've read. So there's more written communication. So you need to be good at that. One thing I recommend to someone who's working remotely is to keep track of your successes and your accomplishments. Have a Google Doc. Keep track of everything you've done, and don't wait till tomorrow to write it down. As soon as you've done something and you feel good about it, write it down and say, I've done this and I've done that and I've done this, because you'll forget it when it's time for a review. And one other nice thing, a side benefit to that, is that if you do end up ever having to make a new resume, you've got a list of all of your accomplishments right there that you can use to then put into your resume. But it can also help you as you're meeting with a supervisor or your boss to say, how do you feel things are going? You pull out your file and you say, well, in January I did this, in February I accomplished this, in March I accomplished this, and you can go through all of those accomplishments. If the manager doesn't pay attention to your accomplishments and you do, you can let them know, and then it's a lot harder for them to say, oh yeah, you don't deserve that promotion or that raise, because you've just listed off all of those accomplishments. Remote first organizations, that the blue bar on some of those charts where everybody's working remote, they tend to be better at monitoring people's achievements, because that's how they measure performance anyway, is by what they've accomplished. But a traditional company may not pay attention as much. So make sure you set aside a few minutes after you've done something to record it, and then recap your wins and let people know. If you have channels like in Teams where you can talk about wins for the week or something like that, make sure you put in your win for the week and get it out there so people see what's going on. The worst thing you can do as a remote worker is to hide from your team. You need to be very visible in your work and what you're doing. And another thing that's important is to continue to learn. And when there are opportunities to take classes or do things that your company has put out there, take them. Show that you're eager to learn and eager to grow. And when you have meetings with your manager, make sure that you tell them, I want to learn this, or I'm interested in this, or this is the direction I want to go. So it's about communication. And finally, my piece of advice would be to be vocal when you're meeting with your manager. Make sure you tell them what you're interested in, what you'd like to do. Take the initiative in striking up those conversations, either in person or virtually, with your manager about how things are going and what your thinking is, because they may not ask. So you might have to initiate those conversations. So I guess the bottom line is be proactive. You have to be more proactive to make sure you're visible. It's like standing at the water cooler waiting for the boss to come by so you can say hi, but it's virtual. You just have to do it so that you can get that FaceTime, however that comes. So any thoughts, questions, concerns?
I'd like to make a comment. I'll see if folks have
Please do.
comments or questions, but
Sure.
I try to put myself sometimes in the shoes of the employer.
Right.
And say, what are the benefits from that standpoint? And one thing I hear from what I think are some of our best employers, our best company leaders, is they're looking for talent. They say what we need is talent. We need great talent. And if we can't find it in the borders of my city limits or even the borders of Kansas, we need talent. And so remote work is obviously a great way to do that. And another reflection I had for people, say my age and older, or older style managers who are used to having our people on site and worry that they're just streaming Netflix, they're just wasting time at home. I have thought that in a way, our remote online classes, it could be a selling point that if you're concerned about that, have your people take the remote work team leader class, have your people take the remote work professional class so that those people know there's a way to track your projects and there's a way to organize your work day, and so that you're not just wasting time at home. I almost think that might be a positive point for our classes.
Katie mentioned that remote work is a skill, and I totally believe that. There are things that you should learn as a remote worker that you might not know as an on-site worker. And if you become good at those ways of communicating or organizing or managing your time or whatever it is, you can become an excellent remote worker, and overcome a lot of the pitfalls that might be perceived as, I'm not managing my time well because I'm watching Netflix or whatever it is. And so as a manager, if you have your team take these classes, then this will help you understand or know that they understand those principles. As a leader, we have a leader course as well that will help you learn how to manage people that you can't see, that you can't, walk past their cubicle to make sure they're not playing games or whatever it is, or whatever. Yeah. So it is a skill. It is something that doesn't come naturally always. Some people maybe, but for most people, this is something that can be taught. It's not it isn't something that you're just born with. And so that's good. That helps me know that I can become better, and I can become a better leader, a better remote worker by taking these types of trainings and classes. So thank you. Any questions or thoughts?
No more snow days, someone said.
I
Yeah.
like that. It snowed here the other day and I didn't have to go out at all, except I had to feed my chickens, but that's about it. So good.
Other questions, comments?
Wonderful.
Aha, Melissa comments her mom lives in a little Delta, Utah. How about that?
Delta's definitely a rural area.
Yes, it is.
It's a nice, and one other thing that I didn't mention, and Delta brings it up, there was a plant that went out, closed down in Delta, where a lot of jobs were lost. We've had that happen in several places in our state. We've had some coal mining related jobs and power plant jobs that have gone out of business or shut down because of whatever the trend is. And remote work has been something that's helped those economies. When those things went down, people retrained and upskilled, and having remote work skills helped some of those people find a job that they didn't have to move away. And that's really big because they've built a life there for years and they don't want to leave that. So that's been a benefit and a blessing to them to have those opportunities. So very good.
I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you sharing that. That's great to know. And for we have these longtime farm families in many cases in Kansas, and they're connected to that land. And so I appreciated your comment, Katie, about the multi-generations.
Yes. We also had a pig farm closed down in a community nearby, took out a couple hundred jobs for that community. Also, remote work was one way that people there were able to not have to leave where they are. And that was a big deal. It was a sale to a corporation that was involved with China. It was a Chinese company that came in, and then they decided to shut it down and move their operations somewhere else. May have moved to Kansas. I'm kidding. I don't know where they moved to, but they moved somewhere else back east or back Midwest somewhere, and took that production out of this area. And that was a big deal. So, but remote work helped several folks there to recover from that economic downturn that they had. So
and I can't help but reflect on the fact that I happen to be in Florida. You guys are in Utah. Our participants are in Kansas. What a great thing that technology has made it possible to connect digitally across the continent.
It is.
Absolutely.
But I do argue that every team should get together quarterly, biannually, whatever it is, to build those relationships. So, and that means you need to come to Utah next, Ron. But we really, or we can go to Kansas. I enjoyed going to Kansas, except there just aren't a lot of mountains, I don't think there. I get lost because everything's so flat. But maybe not. I'm joking. But being able to get together as a team, when you're together as a team in a remote work environment, that time is sacred. It's an important time to spend with each other, to learn about each other, what they like, and what how you can work better together. And so we don't recommend that you spend that time focused on work only. Sure, you do want to do some work together, but a lot of that should be team building and getting to know each other and building memories, so that when you go back to your respective home offices, that you can, for the next 3 months or 6 months, live off of those memories of working together with that person in those activities. And that helps with that loneliness feelings. It helps with relationships with people that you may not have understood as well, and now you can work better with them. You see where they're coming from. Pandemic remote work was terrible because we were stuck in the house. We couldn't go anywhere. We didn't do that. But real remote work lets you do a whole lot more. It lets you have opportunities occasionally to go out and team build and have fun. And you can build a very successful organization with those types of activities with your teams. So anyway.
But you mentioned the word relationships, and I think that's so fundamental to life in many ways, and to remote work and many other spheres of life. So being able to build those, being proactive to build those relationships is a great takeaway I got from today. Are there any other questions? Not seeing questions. You guys did a super job. We really appreciate you all. We appreciate the leadership that you have given on this project. I'm going to give you a virtual round of applause here. We appreciate all Utah State has done. We appreciate the partnership with Kansas State, and appreciate the great ideas and the comments here today. So thank you, Katie and Mike. We appreciate you so much, and we're seeing positive comments in the chat as well. So
thank
we
you to
appreciate
you.
you greatly.
We hope to see more Kansas people in the classes. We love having people from all over the country. So thank you. We
look forward to that. We've touched on this emerging world of remote work and what that can mean. Are there mental health implications? Are there isolation issues, both socially and professionally? These are the kinds of things we're exploring, and we're delighted that our very own colleague, Dr. Elaine Johannes, who's the Kansas Health Foundation Distinguished Professor in Community Health here at Kansas State, will be our speaker in April. So first Wednesday of April, Remote Work Wednesday, will be April 3, and Dr. Johannes will be speaking about the mental health implications of remote work. So we encourage you to mark your calendars and make sure you can join us for that. With that, again, thanks everyone. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to the next Remote Work Wednesday on April 3. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.